Welcome to the Unstuck Career Podcast with your host, Ken Williams. Each week, we move along your path to possibility so you can finally have the life you want. Let's learn how to deal with people you never wanted to be friends with together so you can become unstuck and unstoppable in your career and life. And welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck Career Podcast. I am today with a new friend, Melissa Dey. And she is all the way in British Columbia, not anywhere close to where I am, but she's an integrative mind-body health practitioner, an NLP trainer, and she's the award-winning host of the Don't Wait for Your Wake-Up Call podcast. I love this title. She works virtually with clients worldwide to help them detox their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. She is dedicated to empowering young girls through her nonprofit, Girls Matter. I am so excited to have you with me here today. Welcome, Melissa, to the Unstuck Career Podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, what got you thinking about this idea? I've got a handful of questions, but the idea of this nonprofit where you're helping these young women, where did that come from?
That came from taking my Girl Guides, which in the States you call them Girl Scouts. I have two adult daughters, and I've been a Girl Guide leader since the oldest was 5 years old, which now puts that at like 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
I took them to an event on International Day of the Women in 2013, and that event was showing a documentary called Girls Rising. And it was a powerful documentary of sharing the stories of girls from all over the world that were being denied the right to an education simply because they were female.
Yeah.
And I watched that documentary sitting with 20 girls of, tween years at the time, my two daughters included, knowing that every single one of them in the room, and myself included, had taken school for granted at some point, faked being sick so they didn't have to go to school. And yet here was this documentary about all these girls that were desperate to go to school and being denied that right simply because they were being female.
Right.
I had tears coming down my face because it felt so wrong.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I knew that I needed to do something about that. I had no idea how. I just knew that this was an injustice and that education should be a right and not a privilege.
Right.
And so I sat with that in the back of my head for a couple of years. I was in the corporate world at the time. And as I said, I had no idea how to get started.
Right.
Well, I was let go from my corporate career one day and started on the journey of entrepreneurship, which of course includes personal growth.
Sure.
I'm at a conference where, and this is now December 2016, where a speaker said to wrap up the conference that we are all here on planet Earth to never stop learning, to find our mission, and to be of service.
Mm-hmm.
And that we don't have to know how, we just have to know our why. And those few words resonated so deeply with me. And I went, you know what? I know my why, and I don't know my how. However, if I start speaking my why, instead of having it just inside my one little head, if I start speaking it to other people, resources would come.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. I left that conference and I reached out to the only two people I know that started a nonprofit in British Columbia. And I said, hey, can you teach me the process of starting a nonprofit? And they said, sure, what do you want to do? And I told them, and they said, well, we'll do it with you because you can piggyback it on our nonprofit.
Ooh, nice.
Their nonprofit was building preschools in Uganda and Nepal in communities where there had elementary schools. However, the elementary schools were so overcrowded that kids were getting through and they were still illiterate. And the communities were asking for preschools because then we could start teaching the kids their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s earlier so they have a solid foundation entering the elementary school, and then they can hold their own going through. So they already had teaching staff in place at the preschool who already knew all the girls in the village, etc. And so as a result, we literally launched Girls Matter in January of 2017. And since then, we've helped a number of girls complete high school. We've had some girls graduate from university in Uganda. We've added Kenya as another location where we support girls from the Nairobi slums in
Mm.
getting an education. We would like to add Nepal with more funding because, of course, it's what this is all about is in
Sure.
over 50 countries around the world, education is not free.
Mm.
And what tends to happen is parents are looking at, can I afford to put food on the table for my kids or can I pay the school fees? And food
Yeah.
wins.
Yeah.
And when the girls get into their teenage years, then it becomes a issue of if they get married now, somebody else needs to feed them.
Mm.
And then we have more resources to pay for the education for the boys.
Yeah.
And so girls are getting married off as teenagers. And so that's one of our priorities is by educating the girls, we're stopping teenage marriages.
Hmm.
And by educating the girls, when they get out into the workforce, they grow the GDP of the country. And
Yeah.
a stat that hit me when I watched that documentary was that if India could educate just 1% more girls, they'd grow their GDP by $55 billion.
Wow.
And I went, that's the answer. That's the answer to the poverty that we have in the world. We educate the other half of the population.
Hmm.
It's so simple. It's not easy. It's simple.
Right.
And it's not easy because it requires the rest of the world to come together and pitch in and donate so that we can fund these girls' education.
Right.
And when we fund them, they give back to their community. We have beautiful stories of how the girls come back and support. So, one of the ladies that just graduated from university last year as a teacher, her name's Rebecca. She's 27 years old because they go to school. However, if they don't have funding for a year, they don't get to go to school. So, they
Mm.
miss grade 9 when they're 14, and maybe they don't get to go for 2 years. Well, then they go to grade 9 when they're 16.
Yeah.
So, it's however many years it takes. So, she's 27, graduated from university as a teacher. We hired her to come back to the village to then do a mentorship program or tutoring program over the last Christmas holidays because they have their holidays for 7 weeks at that time.
Okay.
And she was teaching the grade 10 girls physics, chemistry, biology, and math. And we added in financial literacy because those
Mm.
girls have their grade 10 exams at the end of this year and they wanted extra support over the holidays. And so that was a beautiful way that Rebecca, who's now graduated from university, from their village could support the younger girls.
Hmm.
We had another lady who graduated as a seamstress. She chose vocational school. And the community was asking us to send clothing because I was
Mm.
asking questions. I was getting photos of the girls with pieces of paper pinned to the front of their t-shirt. And I'm like,
Mm.
why do they have paper pinned to the front of their t-shirt? The t-shirt is so holy
Oh,
that they
wow.
didn't want to take pictures of them in the holy t-shirts and send them to us. So they thought it was better to put a piece of paper on the front. So when I questioned that, they said, we need clothes. Can you send clothes? We could easily gather clothes
Hmm.
here. However, the cost of shipping would be astronomical.
Right.
And in doing more research, we discovered the clothes would never get to the girls because the
Yeah.
custom officers would open the boxes, receiving, oh, North American clothing, go and sell it themselves and pocket the money.
Hmm.
So what we did is we'd already loaned her money to buy a sewing machine because when she finished school, she didn't have access to one so that she could start a business as a
Hmm.
seamstress. We then sent her funds in order to be able to buy the fabric, and she made a brand new dress for every girl in the village. It was a
Wow.
3-month project. And just think of a teenage girl having a dress of her own for the first time
Yeah.
and what
Not
that
something
does.
that's repurposed or
Exactly. And they were in beautiful native African fabrics and their styles as well, as opposed to putting them in North American t-shirts and shorts, right?
right.
Oh, it's just really beautiful how our girls give back. And we have a number of other stories like this. And so, yeah, it's something we're wanting to expand. And people can find us at girlsmatter.ca. And we have a donation page there. And people can get tax receipts for their donations and set up a subscription donation if you want. Donate $10 a month.
Right.
Because are
I
we going
love
to miss
that.
$10 a month? Most people won't. We just stop, buy one less coffee and muffin at the
Right.
store to work, right?
That's true. So this is not your full-time job,
No,
is it?
that is my volunteer work off the side of my desk Passion project. Yes.
I love that though, but it's so important. I think that there's a lot of value in helping other people recognize their value. And that is, it's so needed. Um, a lot of the people that I work with don't recognize their own abilities, their own values, and compared to uh, a culture that has actively suppressed the progression of women. Um, it's it's so valuable to have that. So has your coaching informed your volunteering or vice versa, or is it a mix?
It's absolutely a mix. There's, in terms of our coaching and the Amplify Impact Academy that I launched last year with my business partner, we donate 10% of all of our revenues to Girls Matter. And
Mhm.
we love doing that. And what we also love about that is that we can say to our students, as you invest in empowering yourself, you're also then investing in a girl somewhere else around the world.
I love that.
And they love that too. And so it's been really well received by our community. And we invite our community to contribute in other ways as well to Girls Matter. And it's just another way we can create a ripple effect. And what's
Nice.
also great about it is an educated girl is more than twice as likely to educate her own children.
Yeah.
So we're not only creating a ripple effect that is expanding in size outwards, we're also creating a generational ripple effect
Yeah.
to shift the lives of these girls and
That's
break the
great.
poverty cycle. Literally one girl, one family, one village at a time.
I love that. And at least the people that I've talked to, the people that I've worked with, they don't necessarily see the value or the benefit or the need or um, the purpose in improving their own lives, but they'll bend over backwards to help improve somebody else. So there's that double benefit, which I think is fantastic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's why we've done it that way. And there's also that piece that as a coach, I want to walk my talk.
Hmm.
And sometimes people choose not to move forward with an idea because it just feels too big.
Right.
That's not something that they can accomplish.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt at the beginning back in 2013 when I saw this. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and it just felt so big. And then as I got into my personal growth journey, I learned I just need to start talking about this. The
Mhm.
resources will come, put it out to the universe. And I created that tagline, one girl, one family, one village at a time, because I
Mhm.
needed to bring it down to a manageable size that I could feel comfortable moving forward with. If
Right.
I did this and I helped one girl, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
And if I help more, even better. As opposed to thinking like I had to help everyone and then what if I didn't, right?
Right.
And so often that's the approach when we're going into our daily lives. We think we have to do it all, and if we don't, it's a failure, right?
Right.
And to shift that mentality for clients as well, to be talking about, well, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a common mindset. I was just talking to somebody earlier today who he imagined that the task that he was focused on was so grand that it required absolute perfection from him.
Right.
And that holds us back because I
Right.
can't I can't deliver, I can't produce until it's exactly right. And the end result is he's not delivering, he's not producing, he's not
Right.
putting anything out. And so um, I love the reinforcement your story, your experience has just given us that we're capable of so much more than we
Yeah,
imagine. And the
absolutely.
first step is to start talking about it, to
Yes.
give words to the desire, the passion, the excitement, the focus that we want our life to have. Um, I was working with somebody this morning who has something like that, wants to have that kind of an impact, but well, I'm just not the guy. wait a second. What makes you think
Right.
you're not the guy?
Right.
And so I said, I want you to make a list of all the reasons you are the guy. Why are you
There
the
you
person
go.
who should be getting this ball rolling? So thank you for reminding us of that. I think that's a great reminder. I know for me, it is so easy, so safe to play small, but
Hmm.
we can't have the impact that I think we're designed to have
Right.
if we assume that that's not where I fit. So I want to ask about NLP because
Hmm.
I know a little bit about NLP and I know that it's powerful. How have you used NLP for yourself? First of all, explain what it is if we have people who aren't aware. But how have you used NLP in helping you yourself create the kind of life impact experience, etc., that you have done?
Beautiful. So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I know in the IT world it has a different acronym. That's fine. That's the world I live in is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So it's literally talking about our neurology, right? The
Mhm.
programming of our neurology and language, the way we talk to ourselves, the language that we use, and how that is even programming our neurology. And that programmed neurology is resulting in behaviors. I use NLP in conjunction with timeline therapy and hypnotherapy. All of these are powerful tools for accessing our unconscious mind, which is the other 90% of our mind that we are never taught about through public health or the school system. We know about the conscious mind
Yeah.
and we have no idea of the other 90% and the tools that we can learn in order to access it. And I just did a podcast that's coming out on we have everything we need within us. We hear that all the time. And what does that really mean? And it wasn't meaningful for me until I dove into this world. And then I
Mm,
understood it because the reality is that when we come into this life as newborn babies, we have four bodies: a spiritual body, a mental body, an emotional body, a physical body.
mhm,
And we have three minds: a conscious mind, an unconscious mind, and the higher self mind.
mm,
Now, the higher self, it actually comes with a blueprint to our perfect health, as well as all of the resources we need in order to live our mission in this lifetime.
mm.
Here's the thing: you can't access it through the conscious mind, the thinking mind. You can't think your way there.
Yeah.
You need to access it through the unconscious mind. It talks to the higher self and the conscious mind. It is the gateway.
Mhm.
And as I said, it's the 90%, and we're not taught about it.
Yeah.
So these tools are so incredibly powerful because when we are young children, we are living entirely in our unconscious mind at that point, up until the age of about 7 to 9 years old.
Mhm.
And this is when all the programming happens. We're literally
Right.
born like the hardware of a computer. And then for the first 7 to 9 years of life, it's just download, download, download all the software so that we can learn how to live in our family unit, in a society, at school, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Around the age of 7 to 9 years old, we have something developed called our critical faculty. And
Mhm.
this is a lace gateway that is like a divider between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And it's lace, or should be lace, for ease of flow of information between the two minds. However, if we're not using the tools of our unconscious mind, it becomes more like a brick wall.
Mm.
Now, as we learn the tools of the unconscious mind and start using them, then it becomes more like lace again. And I talk to this because what happens is we get into adulthood and we have all of that programming from when we were a young child. And
Mhm.
the unconscious mind has a lot of jobs to do and it likes to be efficient.
Right.
Once it's got a program running that works, it doesn't go and look for a better one. It just keeps working the same one,
Yeah.
right? So we get into adulthood and we'll get stuck. Things aren't working as smoothly or in flow as they used to.
Yeah.
And we're stuck. And when we're stuck, it means we think there's no more resources, right?
Mm.
What happens is our inner 5-year-old is still running our life, except that our inner 5-year-old isn't qualified to run our life. And what
Right.
we don't know and haven't been told in many cases is we can update the programming. We can literally shift our programming. What
Hmm.
we have to do, though, is we have to go back into that unconscious mind where the programming was written in the first place in order to update it, right? You
Hmm.
can't update the programming in the conscious mind and expect it to change the program that was in the unconscious mind, right?
Right.
So we go into the unconscious mind in order to update the programming and rewire the neurology so that we get a different behavior.
Hmm.
And this is so incredibly powerful because when we use the entire system, we're literally shifting neurology and filters that create a different movie screen. You know, we have that vision in our mind's eye, the movie screen of our life,
Yeah.
so that we can run the love story instead of the horror show.
Yeah.
And when we run the love story, that literally impacts us physiologically in terms
Hmm.
of running different neurotransmitters. It's affecting our state, how we feel. It's affecting our energy levels. And all of these things affect our behavior. So rather than attempting to change the behavior at the outset, and the only tool we have is willpower because that's all we have in the conscious mind.
Right. That's the only thing we've been taught.
Right. And let's face it, we go to, the gyms are full January 1,
Hmm.
and by January 17th, they're not so full,
Exactly.
right? Because the willpower ran out, our
Yeah.
reserves ran out, right? So we know that doesn't work in most cases. So what we do instead is we go to the start at the top. Let's change the filters. Let's change the neurology. That changes how you look at yourself, how you see the world. That changes how you're feeling. That changes your energy level. That changes your physiology. And
Hmm.
that changes the behavior
Right.
without even thinking about it. Because when we're working with the unconscious, the things that you're doing are outside your awareness, they're
Yeah.
unconscious. You don't think about breathing every second of every day. You don't wake yourself up in the middle of the night to go, oh, heart, pump now, please.
Hmm.
It's all outside of our awareness. And that's how we create change in people's lives really quickly because the
Yeah.
unconscious mind is fast. And using the other 90% is like instead of driving on the highway in first gear,
Hmm.
you're driving in sixth gear
Right.
because you're using all of the tools, you're using all of your mind. And it's so powerful. So that's why I love this work.
Yeah. That's great. I was um actually recorded a video earlier today about being right. And we're so intent on being right. Some of us more than others. I'm I'm one of those that it feels so good to be right. But it, our addiction to being right forces us to be right, unsuccessful. So it's letting that 5-year-old programming, the 5-year-old's programming, not 5 years old programming.
Yes,
Um, and it can be simple things like, and one of the things that's interesting to me is that the lessons that I learned as a child in that up to 7 to 9 range, the
one,
lessons that I learned don't match the lessons that my parents thought they were teaching. And so the lesson might be um, the way to be successful is to go to college and get a degree. And that may work for some people, but it doesn't guarantee success. And not having a degree does not guarantee failure. And so it's a bad program. And we have things like that in all these areas of our lives that we're so tightly holding on to.
yes,
It does not give us an opportunity or create an environment where we can grow and become what we're capable of becoming.
absolutely. So a couple of things there. Yes, that's absolutely holding us back, those 5-year-old programs, right? Or the programs of the 5-year-old, as you said.
Right.
And what you said about being right, we have a saying in our courses where we say you can be happy, healthy, and wealthy, or you can be right.
Right.
People are dying to be right, literally fighting to be
Yes.
right. And what if we let
That's
that go?
right.
And what if we open up to curiosity that maybe there's something different that I just haven't ever come across before. And
Yeah.
it might shift my thinking, right? And so, yeah, being open to that curiosity, open to the continued learning, opening to the fact that the belief that I took on in my childhood might not be the belief I want to hold on to now.
Right. Because it's not serving you well. It's you referenced
Exactly.
the stories that we tell ourselves, and we can be right about that story, or we can be open to the possibility that maybe the story isn't the story that we thought we experienced.
I'll give you a classic example of that actually. And it
Yeah.
comes back to our filters, right? So all human beings have the same filters within our unconscious mind. Filters of how we move through time, space, matter, energy, our values, our beliefs, our decisions, our memories, and also our meta programs are all housed within our unconscious mind. And our meta programs are the basis of our personality, right? So the filter categories are the same for every human being. However, what's stored in those filters are as different as our fingerprints because
Mm-hmm.
no two of us have lived identical lives,
Right.
right? So we take in a lot of information every single day. It's a crazy number. It's 12 million bits per second of information.
It is crazy number. It's a
And that
lot.
is too much for our powerful minds to be able to deal with. And
Hmm.
so what it does is it has to compress it down to a manageable amount. And it compresses it all the way down to 128 bits per second through our filters,
Hmm.
holding on to what's important to us based on what's in our filters and releasing what isn't, right? And then that gives us the movie screen of our life of that event, right?
Hmm.
And so we're literally creating our own reality every single day.
Right.
And and I never knew this until I got into this training. I never even stopped to think about that I could go to a concert with 49,999 other people and have a different experience to the person standing right next to me.
Right.
I just never stopped to think about it. And when I learned this, I went, oh my God, because half my family lives in Australia, half my family lives in Canada. So we get together for family reunions every few years.
Hmm.
Inevitably, what would used to happen is people would say, remember last time when we were together and this happened and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And they'd be like, no, this is what happened.
Right.
And we literally have an argument about it. And I would want to be right
Of
because I'm
course.
that recovering person, right? And I'm thinking,
Right.
what is wrong with my siblings' memories? Like, this is a problem. Anyway, happened all the time.
Siblings' memories can't be trusted.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right.
And so then I got into learning about NLP, and this is the basis of the NLP communication model, is understanding this. I went, oh my goodness, now I get it. I was retaining what was important to me about that event. They
Right.
were retaining what was important to them about that event. They were speaking their truth. I was speaking my truth, and we were both right.
Right.
And I could let go of the needing to be the only one who was right.
Right. Because there's a difference between being right and
Yes,
making sure everybody else is wrong.
exactly. And it allowed me to truly understand how we really do create our own reality every single day. And that if we don't like our reality, that's okay. We can change it because we can actually use tools, timeline therapy that I mentioned earlier, that will change the filters
Yeah.
so that we can run the love story versus the horror show. Timeline therapy allows us to release that sack of negative emotions we've been hauling around for much of our life, weighing us
Right.
down, without having to talk about it over and over and over and over and over and over again, because that
Yeah.
just deepens the neurology of it.
Right.
The unconscious mind already knows what happened. We don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We just need to uplevel the learnings because the
Right.
foundation of all of this is that everything is happening for us
Huh.
always so we can learn something. Remember,
Right.
we're put here on this planet to never stop learning,
Right.
right? So once we have the learning, the unconscious mind can release the emotions attached to it.
Yeah.
And you get to let go of your bag of rocks in one session,
I love that.
not
I
years and
love that.
years of therapy.
That's fantastic. And and I think you're right that it can be as fast a change as it takes to realize that you can be right about a different story. You don't have to be right about a negative story.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And you
that's
don't have to
fantastic.
carry all that negative story around with you. We actually
Right.
celebrate triggers. because triggers are telling us, oh, look, your unconscious mind is telling you that you're ready to deal with this. Yay, I'm growing.
Mm,
Yay, I can change. Yay, I can move forward. However, society teaches us put the hand up, don't want to deal with it,
right.
don't want to talk about it.
Plus
It
that
pushes
I'm responsible for your reaction.
that too,
So there
which we
you go.
know
This
that
is
isn't true either.
right. Exactly. I have enough uh, trouble being responsible for my own my own feelings and
Exactly.
thoughts and reactions. So this has been so much fun. If people wanted to get to know you more, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to connect with you, Melissa?
I have two websites actually. So if people want to know more about the health side of what I do, which we haven't really talked about, that
Mhm.
website is yourguidedhealthjourney.com, which you can see right behind me on the banner.
Right?
In terms of the training and the NLP work that I do, timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, that is amplifyimpactacademy.com. And both
Okay.
of those have a book button as well as a contact form. People can reach out and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. I'd really love to learn more. And I
Love
will
it.
absolutely reply.
And I'll put those in the show notes as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, if you want to learn more about her, check that out. And I can keep talking for a long time, just having this has been so much fun to see, first of all, the great work that you're doing with this girls project that you've been involved in, and the lesson that gives all of us that we're so much more capable than we imagine we are. And
Yes.
so thank you for bringing that to the podcast as well. Um,
Very welcome. And I can talk about this forever
yeah,
because most people, excuse me, simply aren't aware
right.
of the power of their unconscious mind. And that's a message that I really want to get out to the world. And my business partner and I feel very strongly that if everybody in the world just did one timeline therapy session to
Mhm.
release all emotional baggage, the world
Right.
would be a very different place.
Right. Because
And
suddenly the past is no longer a demon.
exactly, exactly. And people wouldn't be dependent on, therapy for years and years and years.
Right.
That is deepening the neurology of the trauma.
Right.
And people, know of therapy that's out there. That's the process that we use in today's world. And timeline therapy is very new. It's only been around since the beginning of this century,
Mm,
as we've learned more about the power of our unconscious mind.
yeah.
And so that's the message that we want to get out to give people choices, because
Right.
knowledge is power. And the more choices you have, then you find the right next step forward for you.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Get back to the work you love, where you face less stress, gain more happiness, and live into your purpose. Let me help you become unstuck and unstoppable so you can finally have the life you want. Head over to my website to connect with me at kenwilliamscoaching.com.